So today's video is going to feature 3 ways. So for one method, we are going to be using a high-speed blender. For one method, we are going to be using the Almond Cow, which is an amazing product that you can potentially win one of if you've taken the Veguary Pledge. And then the third way is like the easiest, simplest way to make plant milk. You don't need any special machinery. All you need is water, some cashew butter, and a bowl and a whisk. So easy. So let's get started. First, I want to tell you about what exactly is plant milk. So if you're not vegan, you may think of milk, commonly as coming from a cow. But we know there are lots of reasons that we shouldn't really be drinking cow's milk. First of all, it's from another animal. We're human beings. Second of all, most of us are adults drinking dairy products. And so we should think of ways that we can remove it from our diet, especially because most of us can't digest cow's milk very well. So plant milk options are often much better for our digestion, for our skin, for so many things. And then the final reason is that, making dairy, cow's milk is extremely taxing on the environment. And so it causes a lot of environmental pollution, but it also uses up a lot of environmental resources to make cow's milk. So we want to find ways to become more self-sustaining and more sustaining for the planet by making our own vegan milks at home. So let's get started with the first recipe. I think the first recipe that I'm going to do is probably one of the most popular plant milks out there, which is almond milk. So we're going to be using our Almond Cow for that because we have it here. So this is the Almond Cow. It is an amazing device. So we're going to use about a cup of whole almonds here. I personally like to use raw almonds because roasted almonds kind of have a stronger flavor. So if you want a more neutral plant milk, always use raw nuts and seeds when you can to get the most neutral flavor so that you can use your plant milks in your cereals, your baking, your recipes, your coffee, whatever. And it's not like taking over the flavor of whatever you're making. So next we're going to nestle our blade and motor down in here and then twist it. And so now this is secure. And now we're going to add in 5 cups of water. And what's nice is you can't see it, but there's actually a fill line inside. So all you really have to do, you don't have to measure. Just pour until you hit the full line. Okay. And then I want to add a little bit of extra flavor to this. So to bring out some of the flavors, let me set this down. I'm going to add in a bit of sea salt, maybe like a few cranks, like a 1/4 teaspoon or less of sea salt. That will help to balance the flavors out a little bit. And then I also want to add in just a touch of vanilla. So I'm going to add in maybe about a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract right into our water, right into the basin. And then I'm going to add in maybe about a tablespoon of agave nectar, but you could also use maple syrup, or you could also put some pitted dates into your straining piece when you're making this. So yeah, about a tablespoon. Okay. So now we're going to situate this like that. Right on we go. All right. Let's twist this to the side. And then, I have my plug here. So it just plugs in to the base of the handle back here. All right. And now all we have to do is touch this button and it's going to blend. And it kind of pulses and pauses as it goes. So let me swirl that around a little bit. And let's get this started. So there's a flashing light here. So when the flashing light stops, you'll know that this is stopped blending. And the light is still flashing, so it's going to go one more time. flashing, so it's probably going to run maybe one more go. Oh, no, it's done. So the flashing light has stopped, and now we know it's time to pour up our almond milk. So I used a cup of almonds and like 5 cups of water. So you're going to probably get like 5 1/4 cups of almond milk from this. And so let's go ahead and pour it on out. And can you see this? Almost instantly, we have vegan milk that we just made in this machine and no straining or anything. Beautiful glass of almond milk. So let's taste it. The flavor is really nice. And what's great about making your own plant milk at home is that, I have a little corn in my mouth, but what's great about making your own plant milk at home is that if you're concerned about some of the extra ingredients that might be in store brands like gums or thickeners, you don't have to worry about that. There's no preservatives. So it's a very fresh, all natural way to enjoy dairy-free milks at home. And another great thing about making your own plant milk is that you do not have to contribute to as much waste, right? So aside from not drinking dairy milk and all of the environmental damage that causes, there's also the benefit that you're not constantly using cartons. So if you're buying your nuts and seeds or grains in bulk, then you do not have to, have all that extra packaging, going through all those cartons of plant milk every week and then having to dispose of those, right? So there's a lot less packaging, so it's much nicer for that reason. So this is an amazing device. I love making plant milks with the Almond Cow. I think you'll love it too. Let's move our Almond Cow machine out of the way and move on to our next plant-based milk recipe. So the next recipe that I'm going to make is going to be using my high-speed blender. So let me make sure it's in the shot so everyone can see it. So you can see my blender here, right? All right, so let's get started. So this next combo I really, really love because I love coconut milk and I love cashew milk. They're both super duper creamy. And so I want to show you how to make your own at home in the blender. So what you will need for this is about 1/2 to 2/3 cup of cashew pieces raw. Raw is best for neutral plant milks. You'll also need about 1/2 cup to 2/3 cup of shredded desiccated coconut. And then I'm going to add in about 1 to 2 tablespoons of chia seeds. So chia seeds add nice thickness, so they're going to help everything bind together. And they're also a great source of like omega fatty acids and things like that. So they're really nutrient dense. So it's a great way to get these into your plant milk and get in some more nutrients. And then again, I'm going to add in about a teaspoon of vanilla extract. I'm going to add in, let's do a dash of cinnamon just for a hint of extra flavor. I'm going to also add in a tablespoon of agave nectar, but like I said, with this, you can use pitted dates or maple syrup as well, or you could just leave it plain. Okay. And then I'm going to add in just a couple cranks of sea salt again to balances out the sweetness, gives it a little bit of boost of flavor, but it's not going to really make a big impact on like the sodium levels of this. So that was less than 1/4 teaspoon of sea salt. And to make this plant milk, we are going to use as much water as left in this pitcher. So the other great thing before I do this and it gets really loud about making your own plant milks is you can control the thickness. So if you want a super thick and creamy milk that you want to use as like a heavy cream replacement in savory dishes or even in your coffee, add less water. If you want something thinner or something, more calorie, that's not as calorie dense, you can add more water. It all depends on what you want, but you're in control because you can customize. So let's add in our water. Okay. And this is not hot water, but this is already strained. So let me add a bit more. This is about 1 liter of water that I'm adding into the blender. So it may get loud, but here we go. So like I said, this is chia seeds, coconut, cashews, cinnamon, sea salt, and agave nectar, and some vanilla extract. So let's turn it on. So the key to getting really smooth and creamy plant milks at home is to be patient when you're blending. So I end up blending my milks for sometimes 30 seconds, sometimes 60 seconds, sometimes 90 seconds. It doesn't sound that long, but when you're waiting and your blender is running, it can feel kind of long. So be patient and let it blend as much as possible to get the smoothest result. So we've got this all blended up, but there's still a fair amount of pulp in here because there's so much fiber in the coconut and in the cashews. So what I'm going to do is strain this off. So let me grab a bowl. Now, if you want to get every single last chunk and piece of fiber out of this, you could use something like a cheesecloth, but I'm personally lazy, so I'm just using a strainer here, and I have this over my bowl, and I'm just going to pour it on through, and this will catch the bigger chunks. So I'm just going to be patient and let this sit. If you try to use like a spatula or something to move it through the straining, you might push through more of the pulp. So if you're just patient about letting it strain naturally, you're going to get a smoother, less chunky result. But the other great thing about making your own plant milk is you get to use the whole nut, the whole seed, and the whole grain, right? So I don't necessarily want all this fiber and cashew chunks in my plant milk, but I could definitely use it for baking. I've used it in like homemade granolas where I mix in these pulps with like my oats and my dried fruit and my spices to make my own granola, and it has extra flavor in there, but it's really, really fine textured. Yeah, so baking is a great way. And then also sometimes I just save this and then I just throw it in my smoothies because my smoothies are thicker and I'm going to blend them again. I don't mind having some thickness or some extra fiber in my smoothies that I make. So, you don't have to necessarily worry about discarding this. And, I just always have a jar or a bowl. Sometimes I'll just put it in the fridge. Other times I'll put it in the freezer if I don't have anything in mind to do with it right away. But it can help you like cut down on food waste. So that's another great option. So this is pretty well strained. So let me move our strainer out of the way. And then let's pour up a glass of our cashew coconut chia milk. So I don't know if you can see it up close, but it's got a nice, thick, creamy texture. Excellent for a coffee creamer. Excellent for cooking and baking for sure. Now there is a little bit of extra fiber in here. So like I said, if you really care about that, go ahead and use like a cheesecloth or something like that, a nut milk bag. But the flavor is this. Woo, it feels like a meal. The flavor of this is so good because of that cinnamon and cashew and coconut together. Oh, so good. Have you made nut milk at home before? And if you have, what is your favorite combination of things to put in? And then also let me know, like, what do you use? Do you use a blender? Some people have juicers. You can make nut milk in your juicer if it's like a slow masticating juicer. Let me know what you're doing when you're making your plant milk at home. Or if you've never done it before, are you interested in trying it soon? Let me know what you think. So the final way is probably by far the easiest way. And I discovered this method kind of when I was in a bind this summer. I was working on a recipe and I needed plant milk and I could not get out of the house to go get it. It just was not an option for me. And so I had to use what I had available in the house. And what I had available in the house was cashew butter. So you can use roasted cashew butter, but I highly recommend, like I've said with the other milks, to use raw. And literally all you need for this is a bowl, your cashew butter. You could also use raw almond butter. You need a whisk and you need water. And then you can spice it up however you like. Let me show you. So I'm going to take about, I would say this is about two. Let's just do one because this is very big. I'm going to do about 1 tablespoon of the cashew butter and add this into my cup, my bowl, whatever, my measuring cup. And what I'm going to do with this is add in about 3/4 cup of water very gradually. So I'm going to go ahead and add in just a tiny teensy weensy bit of vanilla. I just like vanilla in my plant milk. just the smallest bit. So a little bit of vanilla extract and like the tiniest bit of agave nectar. Just a kiss. Not too much. All right. So we're just going to start by adding a splash of water in, because really what we want to do is break up the cashew butter because it's really, really thick. And because it's so fatty, it's kind of resistant to mixing in with the water. So you have to be a little bit patient at the beginning just to break down the cashew butter, get it to loosen up. So that's just what I'm doing here. You can't really see up close, but this is basically the longest part of making this, is getting your cashew butter to break up and start incorporating in with the water, getting emulsified. Whisking more vigorously because the cashew butter is not fighting us anymore. Okay, here we go. All right, so now we have a thick, creamy, watery consistency, and now we're just going to add in the last bit of our water. Like I said, our goal is to add about 3/4 cup of water total. So let's just go ahead and do that now. And then we just have to whisk. Now, if you don't want to do this by hand, you do not have to. You could always just put your cashew butter and your water and whatever flavorings you want into your blender. But this is a really great option for people who don't necessarily have a high-speed blender either, because sometimes those nuts and seeds can be tough to break down. They might wear out your motor if you have like an older model of a blender or something that's just not like as high powered. So this is a much gentler way to make your plant milk. And all you need is raw cashew butter and water. And like I said, the spices or seasonings of your choice. Now, like you can see here, I am using a roasted cashew butter for this recipe. And so it's got like more of a tan color. It's not as white. But if you use raw cashew butter, you'll get a much whiter milk like this. All right. So we have our third plant milk all mixed up and ready to go. And it's really good. Now, I will say, of all the options, this is a great option when you're in a bind. Like if you happen to have some nut butter around, because, you know, like if you're running out of something or you just want to use it in a recipe or put something in your smoothie really quick, this is an easy way to do that. Here we have it. 3 delicious plant milks that you can enjoy at home. We have an almond milk that we made in our Almond Cow. We have a cashew coconut milk that we made in the blender and added some chia seeds to. And then we just have our whisked cashew milk that we made with a whisk in a bowl and some water and some cashew butter. So these are 3 simple, delicious ways that you can enjoy plant milk at home that are more friendly to the environment. They're better for your health, and they're definitely more affordable overall.